Item number 6 under motions and resolutions. The item is support for sexual harassment awareness. So if there are no objections, this is got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did ask for this to be taken out of order just because we have students that are asked to come forward and speak. So hopefully we can get the homework or whatnot. But at last month's meeting, we passed a resolution called to designate all the public schools as a respectful school. And this was geared towards sexual harassment, domestic violence. And as much as a resolve states that we as a school committee stand behind a certain initiative, I think actions speak louder than words. And my motion, which will come for us in a little bit, has to do with sexual harassment training and education in the school district. And one of our clubs has been putting in a lot of hard work into trying to move forward in the school system in regards to sexual harassment education, whether it's students or teachers. So,
ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me this time to speak. Thank you, Jen, for sponsoring the club and adding this to this agenda. I have been a social studies educator in Malden for 17 years. I started my career in Malden teaching 8th grade at Beebe, then at Salem Wood, and in 2007 I came to the high school where I have been ever since. I have been teaching about social justice since I started in Malden. For as long as I can remember, I openly discussed racism, white privilege, sexism, and the discrimination of the LGBTQ community. I spoke about these things at a time when it was not universally agreed that was a good thing. I spoke about these things when some of those ideas could have very well gotten me fired. But I did so anyway, because I believed promoting a more fair and just world was worth my job. Over time, the things I taught that seemed extremely progressive and controversial at the time have become more mainstream. Fast forward to today, where we have a district focus on equity and are providing workshops about the duty of schools to teach social justice. That is why it pains me to see the gaping hole in the district's work on equity. The prevalence of sexual harassment in our schools is both unacceptable and highly preventable with the proper staff training and student education. But year after year, we continue to ignore the problem. For the last 2 years, I've been working with students to try to change this. In addition to the Feminism Club, several 9th grade classes have chosen this issue as a place to make change in their Generation Citizen projects. We encourage students to be politically and socially active citizens, but after they have spoken, with this, we have done nothing. This has sent a message to them that girls demanding to be treated with dignity in schools is nothing more than an attempt at social activism, worthy of a commendation for our efforts, but not worthy of action. To his credit, Mr. Mastrangelo has been an ally in promoting this cause. He, along with me, lobbied for the adoption of some sort of training for staff and students, but despite his support and that of the adjustment counselors, there has still been no action. We don't act for many reasons. We don't have an accurate picture of how pervasive it is, mostly because girls remain silent. We as a society are very uncomfortable talking about sexuality, despite the fact that culturally we are drowning in sexually explicit messages. Our own beliefs are often tainted by negative beliefs about women and girls. As far as women have come, on this we have changed very little. The Me Too era gave us the megaphone, but some still don't want to listen. We are reactive instead of proactive. Every day that we ignore this inequity is a cruel reminder of the actual value of women and girls in our society, and we have a duty to do something about this issue. We are failing all our students, but more specifically our girls. By not teaching them and leading them, they fall prey to the worst societal messages that promote male dominance and sexual objectification of women and girls. We are continuing to normalize the cultural message that sexual harassment and assault, although terrible, are inevitable. We are still sending girls the message that it is their fault. We are telling them the price of their beauty is abuse. Messages that reinforce toxic masculinity and violence are everywhere. We are raising boys who become perpetrators and girls who become victims. We are letting the internet be their teachers. I know what you may be thinking, not all boys. But regardless of whether all boys are participating directly in this behavior, and many are, at most are at best silent bystanders, afraid to lose social standing if they speak up. In addition, many girls are internalizing these messages and also causing harm to one another. Girls need to hear they do not have to accept this, and boys of conscience need to be empowered to speak up and speak out. In our district work on implicit and explicit racial bias, we acknowledge that the group that has the most privilege might be uncomfortable, and that was okay and necessary to work through as part of the process. The focus, rightly so, was on how our students of color deserve to come to school in a place that values them and where they are represented. We are slowly addressing the legacy of white supremacy in education, but when we discuss sexism, we still worry about how the boys will feel. I have a 14-year-old son, and it is just as important to me that he learn how not to promote and participate in sexist acts as it is for my daughter not to be victimized by them. Many boys I speak to are caught in this world not knowing what to say or do. It is our job as the adults to teach them. Too often, because the societal messages surrounding gender and dating relationships are absorbed at a subconscious level, we see things as normal and expected that should cause alarm. Sexism is often tied to the ways in which we learn how to interact with the opposite gender. These beliefs are not inherent, they are not natural. They are learned and they can be unlearned. To illustrate the importance of this in more concrete terms, here are the following statistics, and then some students will be speaking. 1 in 3 teenage girls in the U.S. is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. Nearly half of all students in grades 7 to 12 report experiencing sexual harassment in the previous year, and 87% describe negative effects such as absenteeism and poor sleep. Among high school students nationwide, 11.8% of females and 4.5% of males have reported being forced to have sex when they did not want to. Middle and high school age youth experience the highest rates of rape and sexual assault. However, there are few resources available to support them and address their needs. More than bullying, sexual harassment erodes school engagement, alienates students from their teachers, breaks down relationships among students, and negatively affects academic achievement. Today, tweens and teens are in greater need of adult support, guidance, and intervention. They face issues related to media use and technology, cyberbullying, slut-shaming, and revenge porn. A feeling that is picture day every day. Relationship violence through devices, and pressure for nude pictures and other sexual harassment. At this time, there are some current and former students who would like to share their experiences.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Pereira, and I'm a recent graduate of Milton High. I was fortunate enough to work with Mrs. Veritas throughout the entirety of my high school career toward achieving gender parity at the high school and in surrounding areas. I was president of Feminism Club for the latter half of my high school career, and as someone who strived to facilitate and promote the timely and provocative discourse that we are having tonight in this very room, like the one that takes place here every week, I can say that it made us better. Over the years, our club has attracted a diverse audience of students from varying demographics and ideologies, and still, we've held some common beliefs. Foremost, that bodily autonomy is the most important. We believe that on this earth we are the sole proprietors of our bodies, and in holding that belief, for the very first time we created a space where intimate stories could be told of when that bodily autonomy was violated, oftentimes on school grounds. Some of our speakers will offer agonizing accounts, some for the very first time in public, of how disregard for human dignity has pervaded our educational culture, how they've been physically violated and psychologically stifled. These are not lighthearted anecdotes or porous, unsubstantiated arguments, and one of them is my own. The very first semester of my freshman year, as I stood to turn in a paper to Ms. Veritas, I overheard 2 boys behind me within earshot describe another girl's body in terms of my own, how closely mine resembled hers in crude, vulgar terms. Having never felt so inanimate, I stood paralyzed, oscillating to and from the decision to tell the one person in the room who could have helped me, and returning to my seat, helpless and complicit, which I ultimately did. Although respect should be learned at home and applied in school, among other environments, what we are facing is pandemic. Silence in the face of sexual exploitation is a generational legacy that we've reinforced on school grounds again and again with brazen negligence of the issue as we laud ourselves for our diversity and inclusion to save face. The students of today are the parents of tomorrow, and their children will be the first fruits of whatever decision emerges tonight. This is not a fanciful, unattainable dream. A healthy educational environment wherein students flourish, unhindered by fear, is squarely within reach. And though listening is not a passive task, we trust that what is true and just will prevail tonight and always. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark. I'm a sophomore at Alton High School. When I attended Salem Middle School, there's a frequent event that would occur within the student body. It was so frequent that it was given a name, and it would be scheduled through social media multiple times a year. Students would encourage each other to touch their peers in an inappropriate and certainly non-consensual way. I can recall this happening to myself and other students as early as third grade. I have a very vivid memory of myself and another female student being groped simultaneously in the hallway as we were trying to read our books for English class. We were just 8 years old. The only thing that was ever attempted was in 7th or 8th grade when they pulled the entire grade into the auditorium where romantics were touching each other and banned all forms of physical contact. But that wasn't enough, and it did nothing to address the root cause of the behavior. At that point, we were all teenagers, and it had already been ingrained into our minds and our culture that this was normal, that this was okay, that if a boy hit you or was mean to you, it meant he liked you, and that we should just ignore it and put up with it. That's not good enough. That's not the reality I want for our young students. It's not the future they deserve. It's not the experiences any of us deserve, but it is the experiences that we went through. But right now, we have the power to prevent future generations from having to go through those same things.
Hello, my name is Tony Patel. I'm a junior at Alton High School. I love my school. I love learning, the teachers I've met, the friends that I've made. I walk those halls every single day. And I run into the same issues. Issues that can determine what I wear, how I stand, and even how I approach certain peers. We have a problem. Malden High has a problem. This school needs to see change. The students and even the faculty need to be educated now more than ever. Taught about sexual harassment and how to handle it. Us girls are forced to be the silent targets. Forced to stand tall and take shot after shot. This year, I was hit too hard, much like many young girls at Malden High, even in the past. This September, my classmates and I were called out of the school for a fire drill. As I was standing with my peers, an acquaintance of mine approached me. He began cracking sexual jokes about my body. I'm a 17-year-old girl. And hinting about how if he had his way, he'd be changing our platonic relationship into something more. After repeatedly asking him to stop and telling him I was not interesting, he began to force his phone into my face. He was making a smirk in an almost threatening way, bragging about a nude photo on his phone. I began pleading with him, asking him to stop. He didn't. At that point, he began shoving his phone into my face. I turned away, again, asking him to stop, bringing myself further and deeper into the crowd. People were looking, nothing was said, nothing was done. He began laughing, taunting, just take a look. What I saw in front of me was beyond discomforting. Though it seems small, it still bothers me to this day as I stand in front of every last one of you. And at the time, I didn't know that this was sexual harassment. I didn't know that what he was doing was illegal. I thought that it was normal because he didn't touch me. This is the problem that your students are facing.
My name is Aja Swing, and I go to Malden High School. Throughout my middle school and high school career, I have been catcalled, I have been pressured and threatened to send nude pictures of myself. There has been situations where boys have made me feel like I would be less of a person if I didn't do the things that they wanted me to do sexually. I was strong enough to say no majority of the time, but the same boys that asked me to do those things turned it around and called me names. They bullied me and they spread rumors. Told other people that I did the sexual things through that I didn't even do. I said no. The boys thought that it was okay to spread negative rumors because they didn't get what they wanted. There has been a time where I wasn't strong enough to say no, where I was outnumbered and felt like I couldn't get out of the situation I was in. I asked myself if this is what it meant for a guy to like me. I started to believe that if a boy wants to see your body so badly and if he says all these sexual things, it meant he liked you. Even though I felt offended with all the things that were being said to me. It had a huge negative effect on my mental health. I felt like I was the only girl getting bullied for it. I felt worthless because I wasn't comfortable with what the boys had said to me. I felt like I needed to be comfortable with it. It made my confidence plummet. I talked to some adults about the rumors being spread and other situations going on, but there was not much that they could do. Talking to the adults was not enough. So I felt like I needed to change my schedule at school and be away from the negative, uncomfortable environment. Last year, I changed my school schedule to doing an online course at Malden High so I could avoid being inside the negative environment of the students. This year, I am doing a program to take classes after school because of the same reason. I don't want to be in the negative environment, the uncomfortable situations that I've been put in. I believe there needs to be an awareness that kids should learn the negative effects of sexual harassment before the boys that are growing up now start thinking that this is all okay. I don't want any other girls going through anything that I've been through. Thank you.
My name is Sophie Duffy, and I'm a junior at Malden High School, as well as the president of the Feminism Club. I'm here to tell you about what sexual harassment does to a person and how powerless it can make you feel. During my sophomore year, the Feminism Club and I had been selling movie tickets during lunch after the lunch period to see a movie called Dolores. While selling the tickets, a group of well-known boys came up to us and physically blocked off our table from other students, as if we didn't have a right to be there. After asking them to move along multiple times, one boy loudly announced that we would make better movie ticket sales if we flashed them and lived in their tops. They used more colorful language, but we did it. The worst part about that experience was not what was said, but how we reacted. We shrugged it off. We had become so accustomed to comments like that, it didn't register to members of the club that what had been said to us was sexual harassment. In fact, it wasn't until I jokingly shared the story with Miss Veritas and saw the anger in her eyes did I realize what had been done. Why is it so easy for them to say things like this? It is because they have been taught time and time again that they can get away with it. They felt so comfortable saying this in a place with so many witnesses and so many cameras because they knew there wouldn't be any real consequences. What were we going to do? Report them? That's humorous. We felt powerless because nothing was going to help it. What bothered me more than the comment was that Ms. Veritas wanted me to report it. She wanted justice for me and I couldn't follow suit. I knew that by taking action against the boys, all I would be doing was hurting myself in the process. I sit next to these kids in my math class and I'm friends with their friends. The only person who would face any repercussions from their actions is me. And any other girl that is subjected to comments or behavior like this knows it as well. Once the situation is reported, the social backlash begins and you start to feel the dirty looks and insensitive remarks. But the reporting of harassment shouldn't punish the victim while being inconsequential to the perpetrator. Something has to come of it. My goal tonight is meant to instill you all with a sense of urgency. I am well aware that the vehicle of change rolls slowly, so tonight we need to be the catalyst of that change because something has to come of it. History has a tendency of repeating itself. Repeating itself with oppressing people because of their skin color, sexuality, creed, or in this case, gender. Today we have the opportunity to stop this vicious cycle. We are here because something has to come of it. I want to leave you with a quote from the great civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. that I feel captures the gravity of this current situation. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Malvern High School students deserve better. They deserve to be able to access their education to its fullest without distraction and without fear of harassment and retaliation. Let's put an end to this injustice.
Before I close, I just want to say how proud of the girls I am. What can we do? We can provide staff training to face our biases and challenge our assumptions about these issues. Administrators need specific training about how to handle reports of sexual assault from a social emotional standpoint, not just a legal one. Staff and students need to be educated about the law and how to report and receive a complaint. Students need education by professionals around how to navigate these topics with an explicit focus on acceptable and unacceptable behavior, consent, and the role of bystander. Girls need to be encouraged to speak and continually hear that sexual harassment is not normal and should never be tolerated. Boys need to be held accountable for incidents of sexual harassment, but also need to be educated early to prevent the incidents before they happen. The worst part for me is hearing them say nothing will change. It never does. It breaks my heart and it fuels my anger, as it should yours. The work we are doing around race and LGBTQ rights is necessary, important work, but so is this. Too often we are told to choose, but it's not an either or. For social justice to be true justice, it must be an and. I am asking for a commitment from this committee and the city to make this a priority. I'll leave you with this. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She is kind, compassionate, vibrant, beautiful, and smart. And I have precious little time before she will face what has been outlined here. I am speaking up for her and for all of our daughters. We owe them more. Thank you.
Anyone else will close that portion of the meeting?